used to travel a lot for work, and most of the time I stayed in cheap but decent hotels because I didn't care about anything except having a bed and a shower. Nothing scary ever happened to me in any hotel before, so I never thought about danger or weird people. That changed during a trip I took for a training event in a small city in Pennsylvania. I checked into a regular-looking hotel that had a small lobby with old, depressing red carpet and a smell that reminded me of my grandma's house. The woman at the front desk gave me a room key, and I went up to my room on the 3rd floor. The hallway was very quiet and felt a little empty in a strange way. My room was pretty normal with a small bed, a desk, and a bathroom. I threw my bag on the bed, turned on the TV, and tried to relax. I was tired from driving for hours, so after showering and watching TV for a bit, I tried to fall asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard something sliding on the floor. At first I thought it was the ice machine or some noise from the hallway. I was half asleep and did not want to get up, but then I heard the soft sliding sound again. And this time it was right by the door. I turned on the lamp and looked at the door. Something small and white was sticking out from underneath. I got up slowly and picked it up. It was a folded piece of paper. There was handwriting inside, very messy and uneven. It was only a few words, telling me that someone was watching me from somewhere inside the hotel. My heart started beating harder because I had no idea who could have written that. I didn't hear any footsteps after the note appeared, and the hallway had been dead silent. I stood in the middle of my room, feeling unsure if I should open the door or stay inside. I decided to lock the chain lock and sit on the bed with my back against the wall. I kept the lamp on so the room would not be so dark. I felt too awake to sleep now. About 20 minutes passed before I heard the sliding sound again. I stared at the bottom of the door, waiting to see what would happen. Another small piece of paper slid through slowly, like someone was gently pushing it with one finger. I walked up to it and picked it up. The second note said something even stranger. It said that person had been inside my room earlier in the day before I arrived, and they liked watching people sleep in this hotel. The handwriting looked shakier than the first note. I felt a wave of fear go through my chest, because the idea that someone had been inside my room was too real to ignore. I looked around the room, even though I knew no one was in there right now. I checked under the bed, inside the closet, and behind the shower curtain, even though I already knew it was empty. After checking everything, I sat on the bed again, trying to decide if I should call the front desk, but it was after 2 a.m., and I had this paranoid feeling that the person sending the notes might be someone who worked at the hotel. The handwriting looked strange and shaky, maybe like an older person or someone who was unstable. I tried to calm myself down, thinking maybe this was some prank, but it felt too personal. I sat still for another half hour and tried to listen for any sound. Every tiny noise made my body tense up. Even the air conditioner clicking or the pipes tapping, everything made me jump. I told myself that if a third note came, I would go straight downstairs. I would not wait any longer. I kept my eyes on the door, but forced myself to breathe slowly. After a long period of silence, I started to relax again. But then, the third note came. The sliding sound was even slower this time, like the person wanted me to hear it. I walked up to the door again. The third note said something completely different from the first two. It said the person was already inside the room with me again. I stared at the words for a long time. I looked around the room again, even though I had checked everything before. I slowly turned in a full circle, expecting to see someone in the corner or behind the curtains. I couldn't even breathe normally now. The idea of someone hiding in the room with me made my chest feel tight. I grabbed my bag and made the decision to get out immediately. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I unlatched the chain lock and opened the door quickly. I rushed out and slammed it behind me, then ran down the hallway trying to stay quiet but also wanting to get as far from that room as possible. When I reached the stairs, I looked back only once. At the far end of the hallway, I thought I saw a shadow move behind the corner near the last room. It looked like someone stepping back out of sight. I hurried downstairs to the front desk where a different employee was working. He looked half asleep, but when I told him what happened, he looked extremely confused. He said there were only 3 other guests on my floor, and none of them had been walking around. He offered to give me a new room or let me check out early. I decided to check out early and drive to a different hotel, even though it was after 3 a.m. Before leaving, I asked if someone could check my room to see if any windows were open or if anything was disturbed. He took me upstairs with a master key, and when we entered my room, everything looked normal. But the window lock was broken in a way that looked recent. The employee looked nervous and said maybe someone from outside had gotten in earlier. I grabbed my bag and left the moment he finished talking. I drove to a different hotel 20 minutes away and barely slept. The next morning, I called the original hotel to see if they had found anything else. They said nothing strange came up. No cameras caught anyone near my room. No other guests complained about anything. They made it seem like the whole thing was just a weird misunderstanding, but I didn't buy it. I think he was lying. Something strange was going on in that hotel. I still remember the feeling that someone was right outside my door watching me. And the worst part is I keep thinking about the third note saying the person was inside the room again. That's the part that doesn't make sense, and made me question if it was maybe a prank, but the broken window latch said otherwise. I checked everywhere. There was no one. The window latch being broken makes me think that the person might have been coming and going before I ever realized anything was happening. I never went anywhere near that hotel again. I stayed at a hotel in Virginia during a long drive to visit family because I was too tired to keep going. It was late at night, almost midnight, and the hotel looked basic but clean. The parking lot had only a few cars, and most of the building looked dark from the outside. When I walked into the lobby, the man at the front desk barely looked up. He gave me my key and I went to the 3rd floor. Most of the lights were dim, and every door I passed had the Do Not Disturb sign hanging. Like no one wanted to be bothered. Definitely the type of hotel that people stay at out of necessity only. My room was at the end of the hallway. When I opened the door, the room looked fine, but a little messy in a way I couldn't explain. Like the lamp was tilted, one of the drawers to the dresser was slightly open, the blanket on the bed had a small wrinkle near the corner, as if someone sat there recently. It looked like housekeeping rushed or simply just did not care. I dropped my bag on the chair, turned on the TV, and got ready for bed. I got into bed and tried to sleep, but I kept thinking about how messy the room was when I came in. The more I thought about it, the more weird it seemed. I remembered that the front desk man didn't even mention housekeeping when he checked me in, and the whole hotel felt too empty, but I forced myself to ignore it and finally drifted off. I don't know how long I slept, but I woke up to the sound of my doorknob turning slowly. It was such a faint sound at first that I thought maybe the air conditioner made it, but then the handle clicked lightly again, like someone trying to test the lock without waking me. I stared at the door. The room was dark except for the glow from the TV, which I had forgotten to turn off. I could see the shadow of the door handle move slightly. Someone was outside trying to open it. After a few seconds, the handle stopped moving. I stayed still, waiting for another noise. Then the sound came again, but it was different. It was a small metal scraping against the lock. It sounded like someone sliding a key into the keyhole, but that didn't make sense because no one should have a key to my room besides staff. The key turned, but the door never opened. I could see a thin sliver of hallway light in the gap. The door pushed gently once, then stopped. I waited for a voice or footsteps, but there was nothing. Then the door closed softly again, like the person walked away. I stayed awake for almost an hour, listening for footsteps or any sound in the hall. When nothing happened, I convinced myself it was maybe a staff member who mixed up room numbers, and when they realized, they left. I went to relock the door, then I fell asleep again from exhaustion. Fast forward to like 2:15 a.m., and I remember that specifically. I woke again to something that at first I wasn't sure what it was. All I know is I heard the slightest rustling sounds in the room, and I knew someone was in there with me. I was scared to sit up and look, but I did. And then the rustling stopped. I noticed even in the darkness of the room, the slightest sight of a shadowy figure, barely visible in the dark, hovering over my bag in the corner of the room. I said in a panicked, shaky voice, "Who is that?" And a deep man's voice responded, "It's housekeeping. Sorry, I'll leave now." I didn't even respond. I was so shook, but I saw the black mass move from my bag to the door, and then the door opened and closed. I immediately flicked on the light and rushed to the door to put on the chain lock. I went to my bag and saw that it had clearly been gone through. I had to gather myself for a few minutes before calling the front desk. I told them someone with a key just broke into my room and was going through my stuff. The front desk person said that no housekeeping staff was currently there. I packed all my stuff and rushed to the little lobby where I called the police and demanded they check the video surveillance footage. When police arrived, that's when the desk worker agreed to show the surveillance footage, and it showed a large, scary-looking man repeatedly walking down the halls all sketchy-like, going to my door multiple times, and then finally entering my room with a key. The man at the front desk said that the man didn't work there, and he must have somehow stolen a master key from the hotel. I got my money back and immediately fled from that hotel, driving another half hour and eventually sleeping in my car. This experience somewhat permanently tainted my opinion of hotels, unfortunately. I wonder if I could have pressed charges on the hotel for negligence or endangering a guest, or anything like that really, but I never bothered. I just try to block it out now. I used to work night shifts for a small delivery company, so on my off days I would take short weekend trips alone just to get out of the house. During one of these trips, I stayed at a cheap hotel in New Jersey because it was close to a hiking trail I wanted to check out the next morning. The hotel wasn't terrible, but it had that old smell, and the hallways were too quiet, like no one else was staying there. I checked in during the early evening, and the woman at the front desk told me housekeeping had already cleaned all the rooms for the night. I didn't think about that detail until later when everything unfolded. My room was on the second floor, and the hallway light flickered when I walked to my door. I didn't pay much mind to how creepy the hotel was because I was just so tired. I wanted to eat, shower, and go to sleep. The room looked clean at first glance. The sheets were tucked in perfectly, but the pillow on the chair looked a little crooked. I fixed it without thinking and turned on the small TV. After relaxing for a bit and eating snacks, I got in the shower. When I came out, the bathroom mirror was foggy and the room felt colder than before. I brushed it off and got into bed. The room had a dark corner near the small closet, and I kept noticing it out of the corner of my eye. It made me feel like someone was standing there, even though I knew it was empty. I fell asleep eventually, but I woke up sometime after midnight because I heard a strange, soft noise. It sounded like something sliding on the carpet in the corner of the room. I opened my eyes slowly and listened. The room was dim because the curtains were thin and some light from the parking lot came through. I thought maybe I was imagining things because I was still half asleep. Then I heard a quiet breathing sound, not mine, and it was coming from near the closet. I stayed completely still because I got scared instantly. The breathing was slow, like someone trying to stay quiet but struggling. I told myself it had to be the air conditioner, but the unit was on the other side of the room, and it made a totally different sound. I didn't want to sit up because I was afraid of what I might see, but eventually I forced myself to. I slowly pushed myself up on my elbows and looked toward the closet. I couldn't see anything at first, it was just a dark corner. But then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The closet door, which I knew I had left completely open after checking it earlier, was now slightly closed. Not fully, but enough that it looked touched. I stared at the gap and tried to listen. The breathing stopped the second I sat up, and that made me even more scared because it meant something or someone realized I was awake. I wanted to run out of the room, but I was frozen in place. After a minute of silence, I got up very slowly and walked backward toward the door while keeping my eyes on the closet. I reached for the doorknob, turned it carefully, and stepped into the hallway. The hallway was empty and felt even quieter than before. My heart was beating so fast I felt lightheaded. I went downstairs to the front desk, but no one was there. The desk phone was ringing like someone called the hotel, but no one picked up. I didn't know if I should wait or try to find someone else. I didn't want to go back upstairs alone. After a few minutes, the woman who worked the front desk finally came out of the back room looking tired. I told her someone was in my room. She looked confused and said housekeeping was gone for the night, and no one else had keys to guest rooms except for her and one older housekeeper who left hours ago. She offered to check the room with me or move to another, but she seemed so calm that it made me doubt myself a little. I asked her to come with me back to the room just to check. We went upstairs together. I expected to see the closet wide open or something messed up, but when we entered the room, everything looked normal. The closet was fully open again. The pillow on the chair was straight. Nothing seemed touched, even though I knew something had changed earlier. The woman checked behind the curtains and in the bathroom and under the bed, and she found nothing. She said maybe I had a nightmare or woke up confused, and honestly this kind of offended me, but I didn't want to argue with her because I was tired and embarrassed, so I decided to switch to another room down the hall. She gave me a different key and left me alone. I moved my stuff to the new room quickly and locked the door. I checked every corner twice before lying down again. I tried to sleep, but the fear kept my eyes open. It was only around 1 a.m. and the night felt never-ending. I kept listening for anything strange. After about an hour, I finally started drifting off when I heard something that made my entire body turn cold. It was the sound of a housekeeping cart rolling down the hallway very slowly. The squeaky wheels echoed down the hall. The problem was that it was way past housekeeping hours, and the woman at the front desk said no one else was working. I sat up in bed and listened. The cart's wheels stopped right outside my new door. I didn't move. I held my breath for a bit so I could listen. Then I heard something worse. I heard someone else breathing right outside the door, and it sounded exactly like the heavy, slow breathing I heard from inside the first room. It went on for almost a full minute. I wanted to run or call someone, but my phone was across the room on the desk and I was too scared to move. Then I heard a gentle knocking sound. Not with knuckles, but like someone pressing their palm against the door softly. They were feeling the door, not knocking. Eventually the breathing stopped and the wheels squeaked again as the cart was pushed slowly down the hallway. I got up after a few minutes and looked through the peephole, but the hallway was empty. The cart was gone too. I checked my phone and thought about calling the front desk again, but I felt like they would think I was crazy. I locked the chain on the door, pushed the chair against it, and sat awake for hours. I kept thinking about the first room and the breathing. I tried to convince myself it was just someone on my floor messing around. Early in the morning around sunrise, I finally left the room and went downstairs to check out. The woman at the desk was gone, and a man was there instead. I told him what happened, and he gave me a strange look. Then he said something that disturbs me to this day. He said they had not had a housekeeper on staff for the last week because the woman who used to work nights just stopped coming in. He explained that either he or whoever else was on front desk duty would have to clean the rooms in the meantime. He seems like there was something he was hiding from me to save face for the hotel. I asked him if the missing housekeeper had keys to the rooms, and he said yes, she did. I left immediately after and did not look back at the hotel. I kept thinking about how that woman at the desk said housekeeping had already been through all the rooms earlier that evening, even though no one had been hired for a week. I don't know if she made that up or if she actually thought the missing woman had done it, but the breathing I heard in the room and outside my door sounded too real, and the way the closet door moved on its own still makes me feel sick. I think someone had been hiding inside that room before I ever arrived. I think they were still hiding somewhere in the hotel while I slept. I work as a house person at a hotel. It's a mix of maintenance and housekeeping. My job is to mostly help the front desk, which mainly involves me fixing guests' appliances and bringing them supplies. Another one of my jobs is to keep our pool clean and stashed with towels, which is relevant to the story I'm about to share. This took place in summer of 2023. My boss hired a new front desk worker, which for privacy reasons, I'll call her Brianna. She was working the night shifts, so I had a schedule change to help her on nights. It was a Wednesday night, so for our hotel, means it was a dead night, basically no check-ins. Me and Brianna mostly just chatted for the night while we did our stuff, which led to me going to our pool. For a guest here, if you wanted to go swimming, you had to fill out a form which basically gives you all the rules, and you'll be handed a pool key. Our managers gave us employees master keys that can get you into basically anything in the hotel. I clicked the key onto the lock and the pool door unlocked, allowing me to head in. The pool has a storage room which we stash towels and also other stuff like chlorine and whatnot. I opened the storage room and grabbed towels, since I saw there was little to none on the rack. As I was bending down to grab one more towel, I heard something hit the water. I actually jumped because it startled the hell out of me, and it caused me to drop the towels. I rushed out back to the pool area and saw one of our lifesavers floating on top of the water. It was so bizarre because there was no way this lifesaver could have been in the water without having been tossed into the pool. I looked around the pool to see if someone had entered, but there was no one in here except for me. I pulled in the lifesaver out of the pool and quickly got back to putting towels out and left. I was weirded out for sure. I asked Brianna, who was at the front desk, if anyone went to the pool, and of course she said no. I didn't want to bring up the weird incident that happened since she was new and I wanted to give her a good impression of not sounding delusional. The night went on and nothing happened until around 9:30 p.m. I grabbed a maintenance slip and read what the problem was. Room 324's toilet wasn't working. I trotted my way up to room 324 and let myself in with the key. When you open the door, immediately to the right is the bathroom. If you walk straight past the bathroom, you'll find 2 beds on the right side of the room. I headed right towards the toilet and lifted the lid up to fix it. There was no one in the room since Brianna told me the guest wasn't arriving until Friday. While I was adjusting the valves and flapper inside of the toilet to see what wasn't working, I felt the temperature all of a sudden drop. I stopped what I was doing and stood there, feeling the hairs on my arms slowly raising up. What the hell? I said in my head as I looked at all the vents that could possibly be letting cold air in. Then I realized there could be no cold air. It was a summer night, a warm summer night to be specific, so what the hell could make the temperature just drop? As soon as I had this thought, I felt the air return to normal, and my hairs went back down. I checked the thermostat in the room and it read 68 degrees. This put me more on edge now, since I hadn't forgotten the pool incident. I wanted to fix the toilet and get out of here, so I went back into the bathroom and back to fixing the toilet. It felt like 2 minutes went by, because I heard the toilet start to flush again. I sighed out of relief, and watched the water in the tank rise back up. When over the sound of the water, there was an audibly loud thump coming from somewhere outside the bathroom. I froze in place, and then that all too familiar cold feeling coming back. My heart started to race as my mind started to race at what could have made that noise. I put the lid back on top of the toilet and made my way out of the bathroom. I turned my head right to face the 2 beds and saw the room phone on the nightstand dangling. However, I wasn't paying attention to the phone dangling. I was paying attention to what I saw past the phone. In the corner of the room, right next to the bed, there was a really tall person, standing still as ever. I felt myself struggling to breathe with what I was looking at. I was frozen stiff in the doorway of the bathroom. I couldn't see any features on this person. It was just this completely black figure in the dim room, like a character outline when you unlock them in a fighting game. It stood so still I couldn't hear any noise emit from it. Then, I swear to God, he, she, it, whatever, moved. I don't know which limb moved, but all I know is I saw this figure move. I practically bolted for the main door, flinging it open so fast I almost smacked myself in the face. I closed the door and rushed back down to the first floor where Brianna was at the front desk. I told her that I was punching out, and we said our farewells for the night. While driving home, I was wrapped in my head, trying to figure out what just happened to me. I connected the pool incident to the room incident. I had no idea what that thing was in my room. And yes, I say thing now because I realized that couldn't be any human I know, and how I couldn't read a single feature of it. It was enough for me to get out of there. I like to think my mind was just playing tricks on me, but I have no way of knowing for sure. Nothing weird like this has happened to me since, which I'm thankful for, because that was the scariest night of my life.
The rain hammered against the old stone walls of Blackthorn Valley as Dr. Adrian Voss approached the ancient Ravenwood Library, a structure whispered about for generations. Its twisted iron gates groaned as if awakening from a century of slumber, and the moment Adrian touched them, a cold shiver ran through his entire spine. He wasn't a man who feared myths, but something about this place felt unnervingly alive. He pushed the gate open, stepped inside the forgotten courtyard, and felt the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes observing him from the shadows. The air smelled of mold, rotting parchment, and centuries-old dust. The wooden doors of the library loomed ahead, swollen with age and darkness. Adrian raised his lantern and stepped forward, the flickering flame casting distorted shapes across the stone floor. Ravenwood was supposed to be abandoned. No electricity, no staff, no record of existence in government files. And yet, someone had sent him an anonymous letter telling him, "The answer to your family's curse lies inside." Adrian didn't believe it, at least not at first, but the letter contained something that terrified him, a drawing of a symbol he had seen only once in his life, carved into his grandfather's chest the night he died. That symbol still haunted Adrian's dreams, a warped circle with jagged lines and a single downward eye crying blood. His hands trembled as he pushed the main door open. It didn't creak. It didn't resist. It simply swung inward as though expecting him. Darkness swallowed the entrance hall, but the moment Adrian stepped inside, every candle in the room ignited at once with tall, unmoving blue flames. His lantern went out instantly. Something wanted him to see. Something wanted him to walk deeper. The library stretched endlessly, corridors lined with towering shelves, stairs that vanished into shadows, balconies wrapped in cobwebs like skeletal fingers. He moved forward, his heartbeat echoing louder than his footsteps. As he walked past the first row of shelves, a sudden gust of wind, though no window was open, blew through the hall and flipped pages of books as if dozens of invisible hands touched them simultaneously. Adrian whispered under his breath, "Just the wind," but the words felt foolish. Nothing about this place felt natural. At the far end of the hall stood the restricted archive room, sealed by iron bars and a lock shaped like a twisting serpent. The same serpent symbol appeared in every manuscript he had studied about demonic rituals. But here, it felt more real, more alive. He reached into his coat and pulled out the old brass key that had come with the anonymous letter. It was ancient, bent, and covered in symbols he didn't recognize, but his instincts told him it belonged to this lock. He inserted the key. The lock exhaled. Not clicked, exhaled as if releasing breath after centuries. The bars slid open by themselves. A wave of cold swept over him. Inside the chamber was a single pedestal, draped in black cloth, stiffened with dust and age. And atop it, a manuscript bound in a material that wasn't leather, something tougher, darker, almost like scorched flesh. He touched it. The room trembled. The candles outside hissed. The manuscript pulsed beneath his fingers like a beating heart. There was no title, only a symbol engraved at the center, the same cursed mark from his grandfather's body. Adrian's throat tightened. Voices whispered around him. Not one, not two, 100. They circled him like unseen vultures. "Open it. Read. You were chosen." His fingers curled under the cover. The manuscript felt warm, disturbingly warm, like a living creature reacting to his touch. As he opened the first page, a gust of ice-cold wind slammed through the room, and the door behind him shut violently. The candles extinguished. Darkness swallowed everything. Only the manuscript glowed faintly with red, vein-like patterns crawling across its pages. Adrian tried to step back, but his feet wouldn't move. Something held him in place. The first page wrote itself, the ink rising from the paper like smoke, forming words not of this world. "The one who reads this awakens the ancient." Adrian's breath stopped. A pressure wrapped around his chest. The manuscript vibrated in his hands. The ink twisted again, forming a new sentence. The bloodline has returned. He felt something drip onto his wrist. Blood. His own wrist had begun to bleed without any wound. The blood moved on its own, creeping toward the manuscript, like it wanted to join the symbols. "Stop," he whispered, shaking, but the blood obeyed the manuscript, not him. The pages flipped violently, faster and faster, thousands of symbols flashing before his eyes until the book slammed shut with a force that echoed through the entire library. Then everything fell silent. A deep, slow, inhuman breath sounded behind him.
The inhuman breath behind Adrian made his entire body freeze, every nerve screaming for him to run, but his legs refused to obey. He could feel the heat of something massive, something ancient, standing inches behind him, though the room was cold enough to turn breath into fog. Slowly, painfully slowly, he forced himself to turn his head, but the moment he moved even slightly, the oppressive presence evaporated like smoke. The candles outside reignited with blue flame. The manuscript on the pedestal shuddered once, then fell still. Adrian, gasping for air he hadn't realized he'd been holding, staggered backward out of the chamber. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the iron bars slammed shut on their own, as if sealing something inside or preventing something from leaving. His heart pounded violently as he leaned against a bookshelf, trying to steady himself. What was that?" he whispered, but deep down he already knew. Something had awakened, something connected to him long before he was born. His hands still trembled as he lifted the manuscript, now strangely cold, and tucked it inside his satchel. He had to get out. He had to understand what this meant. The moment he stepped outside Ravenwood Library, the storm had vanished. The sky was unnaturally clear, stars shining too brightly as if watching him. He hurried home, the manuscript feeling heavier with each step. Inside his small apartment, he locked the door behind him and placed the manuscript on his desk. His mind was racing. The symbol on the first page, the same cursed emblem carved onto his grandfather's chest, was the mark of the entity known in occult lore as Nekroth, the ancient devil of bloodline binding. Legend said Nekroth didn't choose victims randomly. He chose families, generations. A single drop of cursed blood was enough to tie an entire lineage to him. Adrian remembered his grandfather's final moments vividly, the way he had cried out in a language he didn't understand, the way his eyes had turned completely black before he died. The doctor said it was a heart attack. Adrian never believed that. Now the truth was clawing its way to the surface. He opened his laptop, searching through old research files, family notes, and hidden documents he collected over the years. One folder stood out, untouched for nearly a decade. Voss Family Secrets. His grandfather had left it behind, warning Adrian never to open it, but warnings no longer mattered. He clicked it. Dozens of scanned letters, ritual diagrams, and journal entries appeared on the screen. The earliest entry dated back to 1786, written by one of his ancestors, Elias Voss, describing a pact made by force with an ancient one who speaks through blood and shadow. As Adrian read, a chill wrapped around him. His family wasn't cursed accidentally. They were marked, chosen, bound. One particular letter sent a shockwave down his spine. It said, "The devil chooses the eldest born of every third generation. The first sign is the awakening of the mark." Adrian stared at his trembling hands. A burning itch crawled under his skin, and when he rolled up his sleeve, the symbol, the same demonic mark, was faintly glowing beneath the surface of his flesh. His pulse quickened. No, this can't be happening. He tried to scrub it, claw at it, but the more he touched it, the brighter it glowed. Suddenly, his phone vibrated violently as if someone were calling, but the screen flashed with a message instead. Unknown number, no ID, just a message appearing by itself. "You have been chosen." The lights in his room flickered, his laptop screen glitched, showing a distorted face, black eyes, blood dripping from its mouth, whispering his name over and over through the speakers, though the audio file wasn't even playing. Adrian slammed the laptop shut. His chest tightened, his breathing became shallow. He stumbled backward until he hit the wall. "What do you want from me?" A deep, layered voice echoed through the room, not from the phone, not from the laptop, from everywhere. Your bloodline owes a debt. Adrian's eyes widened in terror. I didn't make any pact. The voice laughed, a guttural, ancient sound that shook the floor. Your blood is not yours. It belongs to me. It always has. Adrian grabbed the manuscript, flipping through the cursed pages desperately, hoping to find answers. As soon as he touched the book, it reacted, glowing faintly once more. A new line of ink crawled across a blank page. To break the curse, you must first unveil the truth of your blood. The room darkened. Shadows lengthened like living snakes stretching across the floor. Adrian felt something cold grip his ankle. He kicked instinctively, heart hammering, but nothing was there. Yet the grip tightened. He fell to the ground, breathing hard, as the manuscript flipped pages on its own and stopped at a symbol, a family tree. At the very bottom was Adrian's name. But above his grandfather's name, a branching line had been violently scratched out. Someone had tried to erase a name. Someone his family didn't want him to know existed. The manuscript began to write again. The forgotten descendant holds the key. Adrian stared at it, adrenaline surging. Who is he? Who is the forgotten one? The manuscript slowly formed a single word. Your father. Adrian's blood ran cold. His father? The man he was told died before he was born? A thunderous knock shook his apartment door. Once. Twice. 3 times. Adrian froze. The knocking continued, louder each time, shaking the frame. He moved slowly toward the door. Who's there? No answer. Just breathing. Heavy, deep, inhuman. Adrian backed away. The manuscript glowed violently, flipping to another page on its own, forming one final sentence before the knocking stopped, abruptly.
The echo of the final knock lingered in the apartment like a living heartbeat. Adrian stood frozen, every muscle locked, listening to the suffocating silence that followed. The hallway outside felt unnaturally still, as though the entire building had stopped breathing. He swallowed hard, backing away from the door, his eyes fixed on the shaking doorknob. But it no longer moved. Whoever or whatever had been outside was gone. He didn't feel relieved. He felt watched, hunted. The manuscript on his desk hissed softly, like steam escaping from boiling flesh. Adrian turned toward it slowly, terrified of what it would reveal next. But it had gone still again, its pages dark and silent. He exhaled shakily. "Father alive," he whispered, his voice trembling. His whole life he had believed the story. His father died in an accident before he was born. His mother never spoke about it. The family refused to say a word. And now a demonic manuscript claimed otherwise. His mind raced. He needed answers. He needed to understand the truth before the curse consumed him completely. But the moment he took a step toward his phone to call someone, anyone, the lights in his apartment flickered violently. One by one, they went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A cold wind swept through the apartment, though every window was closed. Adrian spun around, hearing faint whispers rising from the walls, soft, murmuring voices speaking in a language older than time. At first, they were distant, like echoes from a deep cavern. Then they grew louder, clearer, surrounding him. Adrian, chosen, marked. He covered his ears, trembling. "Stop, please, stop!" But the whispers only intensified, crawling under his skin, slithering into his mind. He stumbled backward, knocking over a chair, but the whispers continued, now forming sentences that made his blood freeze. He walks in shadows. He wears the forgotten face. He returns for the bloodline. His breath quickened as the whispers moved across the walls, as though dozens of unseen mouths were pressed against the plaster.
Suddenly, the kitchen light flickered on for a split second. In that brief moment, Adrian saw a tall figure standing in the corner, its silhouette twisted, its head tilted unnaturally to the side, eyes glowing with a faint red light. The light went out again. The figure vanished. Adrian backed into the living room, hands shaking uncontrollably, scanning the darkness. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" No reply, only the quiet drip of his own sweat falling to the floor. Then his phone buzzed. Not a ring, not a vibration. A low, continuous buzz that sounded almost like a growl. The screen lit up on its own. A message appeared. No sender, no number. "Don't look behind you." Adrian's heart nearly stopped. He froze. A cold breath touched the back of his neck. Slow, deep, inhuman. Every instinct screamed for him to run, but terror pinned him in place. The breath grew louder, closer, warmer. Adrian clenched his fists, turned around in a sudden jerk. Nothing. Empty air. But the air had shape. A shadow. A faint outline. Something towered over him, but vanished the second his eyes reached it. His pulse hammered violently. Then another whisper, this time directly inside his ear, a voice deeper than thunder. "He returns." Adrian stumbled backward, knocking into the table. The manuscript slid open by itself. The candles in the room, he didn't even remember lighting them, burst into flame, their fire rising unnaturally high. Words began scratching themselves onto the manuscript's page as though carved by invisible claws. "The night belongs to the Whisperer." The temperature dropped instantly. His breath fogged in front of him. The windows cracked from the sudden cold. Every shadow in the apartment stretched across the floor, slithering toward him like hungry creatures. Adrian grabbed the manuscript and held it against his chest, shaking violently. "Leave me alone!" His voice cracked, but the whispers only grew louder, forming a single chant that repeated endlessly. "The blood, the blood, the blood." Suddenly, the door to his bedroom slammed shut as if hit by an immense force. Then the closet door, then the cabinet door. Every door in the apartment banged shut in rapid succession. Bang, 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 echoing like gunshots. Adrian dropped to his knees, covering his ears as the sound intensified. The apartment trembled, the floor vibrated, dust rained from the ceiling. Then everything stopped. Silence, thick, heavy, terrifying. Adrian slowly lifted his head. The manuscript in his hands suddenly turned warm again. His vision blurred. A new page flipped open. A sentence wrote itself, slowly, painfully, like each letter was carved with a blade. "The one who whispers in the dark is close to you." Adrian's heart sank. He realized the whispers didn't fill the room. They came from one direction, behind the wall, the thin wall that separated his apartment from the next, apartment 14B, the apartment that had been vacant for 12 years. A whisper slithered through the wall. "Adrian." He froze. "I see you." His blood iced over. The voice wasn't demonic. It wasn't ancient. It was human, familiar. He whispered back, terrified, "Who are you?" Silence. Then a soft reply that shattered him to the core. "Your father." Adrian's blood turned to ice the moment he heard the voice whisper through the thin wall. His father's voice. The father he had never seen. The man he believed had died before he was born. The room seemed to shrink around him as he pressed his trembling hand against the cold surface of the wall that separated apartment 14A from 14B. "Dad?" he whispered, barely able to form the word. Silence swallowed the air. Then the voice came again, soft, cracked, drenched in pain. "Adrian, you should not have opened the book." Adrian staggered backward, nearly dropping the manuscript. "You're alive? Why are you... A violent scratching sound rose from the other side of the wall, like long fingernails dragging across wood, slow and deliberate. They kept me here. For years. They kept me here because of the curse, because of him. Adrian felt his throat tightening. Who? Who kept you here? What curse? Tell me. The scratching stopped abruptly. A single knock tapped gently from the other side, measured and patient. Adrian stepped closer, pressing his ear against the wall. His father's whisper turned urgent, fearful. Listen to me. You must not trust the book. Burn it. Destroy it before he takes your soul. Adrian clutched the manuscript tighter. Why did you leave me? Why did you disappear? What happened to... A deep growl erupted from behind the wall, so loud it shook the entire apartment. The voice changed, no longer human, no longer his father. Something else had taken over. Something ancient. He is mine. The voice boomed, shaking the plaster loose from the wall. Adrian stumbled away, terror ripping through him. Cracks formed across the wall like veins of lightning. The lights flickered violently. The whispers returned. Hundreds of them, circling the room, growing louder with every second. Chosen. Marked. Blood debt. The devil returns. The manuscript pulsed in Adrian's hand like a living heart, its pages fluttering wildly as though caught in an invisible storm. He shouted, "Leave me alone!" But his voice was swallowed by the oppressive darkness thickening around him. Suddenly, 3 knocks, slow, heavy. They came from his apartment door, not the wall, not the shadows, the door. Adrian froze. His breath caught in his throat. The knocks came again, louder this time. Bang, bang, bang. Something scraped beneath the door, sliding across the floor. A small folded piece of paper pushed its way into the apartment. Adrian stared at it, horrified. It moved on its own, unfolding slowly like a living creature stretching its limbs. The handwritten message inside made his legs nearly collapse beneath him. Do not open the door. His chest tightened, his pulse pounded so hard it drowned out the whispers. But then, another message appeared beneath the first, as if an invisible hand wrote it. Adrian, it's me. Open it. His father's voice whispered again from the wall, urgent and desperate. Don't open it. That thing is not me. Adrian's mind spiraled. Who was lying? Who was real? The knocks returned, so violent they rattled the hinges. The door groaned, cracking as though something immense pushed from the other side. A low guttural sound seeped through the cracks, half growl, half breath. The manuscript in Adrian's hands suddenly grew hot, burning his skin. Words burned themselves onto a new page. The devil tests the weak with familiar voices. Adrian's eyes widened. His hand shook violently as the burning text continued writing. He has no face, but wears the voices of the ones you love. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then a voice spoke through the door. Calm, soft, and breakingly familiar. Son, please, let me in. Adrian felt something inside him shatter. That voice. He had never heard it in his life, but somehow he recognized it instantly. A tear slid down his cheek. Dad? The voice replied gently. I'm right here. I've always been here. Open the door, son. He reached for the doorknob, stopped, trembling. From behind the wall, the real whisper came again, broken and terrified. Adrian, don't. If you open that door, you're dead. Adrian's heart pounded against his ribs like a trapped animal. He stared at the doorknob, at the manuscript, at the cracking wall, at the note on the floor. The air grew heavy. The shadows deepened. Then the apartment lights exploded, every bulb bursting simultaneously, in a shower of sparks. Darkness swallowed everything. A deep, thunderous voice filled the room, Choose.
The moment the thunderous voice commanded choose, every shadow in the apartment thickened like spilled ink, crawling across the floor as if alive. Adrian stumbled backward, his breath ragged, gripping the manuscript like it was the only thing keeping him from falling into madness. The doorknob twisted violently on its own, metal groaning under invisible pressure. Something on the other side wanted in, desperately. His father's voice, calm and soft, seeped through the wood again. "Open the door, Adrian. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you break the curse." But the wall behind him vibrated, and the real whisper, weak, trembling, filled with despair, bled through the plaster. "Don't listen to it. Don't let it in. That thing wears my voice." Adrian pressed his hands over his ears, drops of sweat rolling down his forehead. "Stop, both of you. Just stop." But nothing stopped. The air grew colder. So cold, frost began spreading across the floor tiles, climbing up the walls like crystallized vines. The manuscript in his hand flipped open again, pages flapping like wings. A single line of blood-red ink wrote itself. "If you open the door, you are his." Adrian froze. His trembling hand slowly retracted from the doorknob. The knocking stopped instantly, as if the thing outside knew his decision. Silence pulsed in the dark. Then, from the other side of the wall, the real voice whispered weakly, "Adrian, you have to go to the basement. That's where they performed the ritual. That's where it all began." Adrian's eyes widened. Ritual? What ritual? A cough, wet, painful, echoed through the wall. "The one that bound our bloodline. The one that marked us. It's still there, waiting." Adrian pressed closer to the wall. "Dad, tell me where you are. Are you trapped inside 14B? Silence. Then the soft scrape of fingernails trailing down the wall. Not in a threatening way, almost like a signal, a plea. Adrian grabbed his jacket, slipped the manuscript into his bag, and stepped into the corridor. The hallway was darker than usual, the flickering lights buzzing faintly as if struggling to stay alive. Apartment 14B's door was sealed with rusted chains that looked impossibly ancient. Symbols had been carved into the door, each one dripping with fresh black liquid. Adrian didn't dare go closer. Instead, he turned toward the elevator, out of order for years, and headed for the staircase. As he descended, the air grew colder, heavier, and the whispers followed him, slithering down the walls, sometimes ahead of him, sometimes behind. He descends. The marked returns. The ritual must complete. His steps echoed through the stairwell like hollow drums. When he reached the basement level, he noticed the door was slightly open, as if waiting. Adrian pushed it wider. A long corridor stretched before him, lined with abandoned storage units and flickering lights. The smell of mold and old dust hung thick in the air. He walked deeper, guided by an instinct he didn't understand, an instinct the manuscript seemed to feed into his mind. Near the far end of the corridor, an old brick archway drew his attention. It looked older than the building itself. The bricks were darker, weathered, stained with something that looked disturbingly like dried blood. Adrian stepped closer. A faint chant echoed from behind the arch, low, rhythmic, in a language he didn't know. His heart pounded as he pushed his hand against the brick surface. It vibrated. The wall shifted. Slowly, the bricks receded inward, revealing a hidden passageway. A rush of icy wind brushed against his face. The chanting grew louder. Adrian swallowed hard and stepped inside. The passage spiraled downward, each step colder, darker. The walls were carved with symbols identical to the ones on the manuscript. Some glowed faintly, as though reacting to his presence. When he reached the bottom, the narrow tunnel opened into a wide chamber. His breath hitched. The room was circular, lit by torches with blue flames. Symbols carpeted the floor, circles within circles,
ancient runes all pointing toward the center, where a stone altar stood, stained with old blood. Chains hung from the ceiling. Bones lay scattered across the floor. Adrian whispered, horrified, "What is this place?" A voice answered from the darkness behind the altar, "Your inheritance." Adrian spun around, heart hammering. A figure stepped into the torchlight, a tall silhouette draped in torn robes. Its face was masked by shadows. "Who are you?" Adrian demanded. The figure tilted its head. "I am the keeper of the bloodline, and you, Adrian Voss, are the one who must finish the ritual your father tried to escape." Adrian's breath froze. "My father? Escaped?" The figure laughed softly, a chilling sound that echoed across the chamber. "He tried, but no one escapes him." The torches flared violently, shadows twisted along the walls. The figure stepped forward, revealing hollow black eyes and a mouth sewn shut with rusted wire. Yet somehow the voice spoke clearly. "The devil chose your family. He marked you long before you were born. And now—" The floor trembled beneath Adrian's feet. Dark mist rose from the symbols on the ground, swirling around him like grasping hands. The figure raised his hand, "And he comes to claim what belongs to him." The ceiling above the altar cracked, darkness dripping down like liquid shadow. A deep, ancient growl shook the entire chamber. The ritual was awakening, and Adrian realized with terror he was the final key. The storm had quieted outside, yet inside Adrian's house, a strange heaviness filled the air, as if the walls were slowly exhaling in dread. He tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, blaming lack of sleep, until he heard it, a slow, heavy thud on the wooden floor. He froze. Another thud followed, deep and deliberate, too heavy to belong to any normal person. Footsteps. Inside the house, and Adrian lived alone. His heart pounded as he grabbed the flashlight on the table. The beam trembled as he aimed it toward the hallway, where the sound had echoed. Silence. Then thud. 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 The footsteps resumed, steady and purposeful, moving with a terrifying certainty as though something or someone knew exactly where it was going. Adrian whispered, "Who's there?" But the house swallowed his voice. The footsteps stopped just beyond the corridor entrance, separated from him only by a thin veil of darkness. Then a low groan rippled through the walls, the floorboards bending under invisible weight. The overhead bulb flickered violently and shattered, plunging the hall into darkness. Adrian's breath stuttered as he tightened his grip on the flashlight. The beam cut through the shadows and revealed something at the far end of the hall. A distorted, humanoid shadow plastered against the wall, impossibly tall, its limbs unnaturally bent, its outline flickering as if half alive, half smoke. The light didn't touch it, yet the shadow remained, defying every rule of light or reality. It moved. One backward bending leg dragged forward, then another, the same heavy footsteps echoing even though no physical form touched the ground. Adrian stumbled back. The shadow seemed to watch him. From behind the walls, a faint whisper slid through the plaster. "Adrian." His blood ran cold. No one should know his name here. The footsteps grew louder, closer, though the shadow remained at the far end. Louder, louder, until the sound felt inches from his ears, yet nothing visible stood near him. The shadow suddenly jerked to a stop. Then, with a horrifying slowness, it raised one long, crooked arm and pointed at him. An icy gust slammed into Adrian, throwing him backward. The flashlight skidded away, spinning wildly until it settled again on the corridor. The shadow had vanished, but the footsteps hadn't. They were now circling him. Heavy, slow, intentional. Something unseen was walking around him, studying him, choosing him, and Adrian realized with a sinking dread that whatever had been bound inside the manuscript was now inside his home.